Good afternoon. Salutations. Today we're going to be looking at post-classic China. This is the Sui, Tang, and Song Dynasties. Now each one of these is a very important part of the post-classic China picture. The Sui Dynasty was important because it re-centralized control of the state after the Han collapsed. Under the Tang Dynasty, we see bureaucracy grew to a state it had never been. And in the Song Dynasty, we see a revival of Confucianism and technology, which is going to propel China for the next few centuries. The Sui Dynasty starts in 590 CE. This is after a 2-century collapse after China's Han Dynasty fell. This is the same dynastic cycle we always see. Great big powerful dynasty rises, everything's going fine, then it collapses. Decentralized state. Everything gets better again, everything goes fine, collapses again, decentralized state. We're at one of those pickup parts again. The Sui Dynasty gets started by Wendi. This is a very, very good dynastic leader. He secures power through marriage as well as support from other neighboring nomadic leaders. He uses what he can with who he can. For him, it's not necessarily about morality and issues, it's about how can I get power fastest and keep it longest. The problem is he has a son named Yangdi. Yangdi is the total opposite. He actually murders his father. He extends the conquest plans his father starts into Korea, Vietnam, and part of Cambodia. The problem is he failed in all of them. He does help drive back the nomads, but this is one of those real little things he contributes real late in the game. Probably the best thing that Yangdi does is he reinstitutes the Confucian exam system. That's the system that says study Confucius, take a test, get a good government job. Very easy to do, open to everybody. Ultimately, Yangdi dies because his plans, which are going to make everything better for a lot of people, hurt the people at the top. And like we saw with Gaius Julius Caesar, that doesn't work out too well most of the time. He does build very lavish palaces, but then he taxes the people to pay for those palaces. You can't win if the people are mad at you. And his continued failed attempts to take Korea left the state bankrupt. This is going to lead to a military coup and ultimately the collapse of the Sui Dynasty. The presence of the Tang Dynasty was really a big. Following the fall of the Sui Dynasty, we're going to see it's the emergence of the Tang, which is really going to be responsible for shaping China in ways that had not been expected up until this point. After Emperor Yangdi died, it was Li Yan that comes into power next. Now, he is a very powerful duke, he's a nobleman, he's an aristocrat, and he's a general. He gets the people to back him, attacks Emperor Yangdi, kills him, then claims the mandate of heaven for himself, and becomes emperor, starting his new line. Now, as soon as Yan comes to power, one of the first things he does is he attacks the nomadic tribes of the north. This is near modern-day Mongolia. He feels that this is going to be the biggest threat he's going to face. And he gets them under control, and then he holds hostage a bunch of their kids. He does this so that those people who attack him will decide not to attack ever again. This action, coupled with the attacks to take Korea and turn it into a tributary state, is going to make China, during the Tang Dynasty, bigger than it had ever been. Now, for something this big to exist, it needs bureaucrats, the people who are going to run your government on a day-to-day basis. The Confucian test helped to continue for this to exist. However, over time, a group of powerful noble families are going to use this test to their advantage. They're going to use the bureaucracy to their advantage so that they can take control. Once these families get control, and mind you, this is something that doesn't happen immediately. This takes a couple centuries for it really to get going. But once they're there, they know it, and they use the test to their advantage so that they can maintain power and authority no matter what. At this time, we also see a transitional state that happens inside the Tang Dynasty in reference to religion. Buddhism is seen in a new light, and now not that great. Buddhism was threatening to Confucianism. Buddhist monks paid no taxes, served in no army. So you've got a religious and a social issue here. Couple that with Empress Wu, not Dowager Empress, an honest empress. She liked Buddhism and built quite a bit for it. Now, unfortunately, that means that when she died, because she was a she and because she liked Buddhism, the nobility at the time decided to go after Buddhism to ipso facto go after her. When they do this, they destroy thousands of Buddhist temples and really push it to the end of where it's going to be. The Tang Dynasty ultimately collapses for a variety of reasons. Most of them are political. There is Empress Wei, who tries to get her son to be emperor, and she does this by poisoning a slew of other kids along the way. Surprise, surprise, this does not work, and she gets tortured to death. This wasn't just bad for her, this is bad for the whole royal family. Usually you groom about 2 or 3 kids to be emperor next. When those kids are gone, and then the next 6 after that are gone, you have a huge problem of who's going to rule and who's going to rule well. We're also going to see that the military leaders at this time are going to push for individual revolts. This is the same thing we see when any empire gets too big. It's very difficult to want to fight for the state when you're more interested in fighting for your own local autonomy. These regional lords are going to want more and more power. Eventually they're going to devolve into their own independent army, and this is going to lead to revolts against the state. And once that happens, the Tang Empire as we know it will no longer exist. Just when it seemed that those provincial leaders were going to take control of China and that China would fragment again into something like the Warring States period, we saw a very powerful great general named Zhao Kuan-yin took power. He established a collective group of trends which were very successful for China. Not only does he start the Song Dynasty, which is good, he is going to have a problem. He does not work well with the northern nomads. Now, that's one of the big things the Tang did. Zhao is more happy to just leave them alone. And this is going to start a very bad precedent where during the Song, not dealing with nomads will come back to be problematic. The Song policies we're going to see all are directly related to the fact that the Song saw how the Tang died. They knew what the Tang did. They knew how they died and how to not make those same mistakes. First off, they're creating a civilian infrastructure for the army. The thought was if some regional government or regional general decided he wanted to take power for himself, the civilian bureaucracy would see to it, then alert the proper authorities, so this kind of thing didn't happen anymore. They also put an open rotation for all commanding officers. Purpose of this was to make sure that no commanding officer is ever in a place long enough to create a very loyal group of soldiers underneath him so that he can take over the state. The problem that this created, though, is because when you're constantly seeing your generals and commanders cycle in and out, no one knows who anyone is, and there's a real lack of trust going on. As far as the political philosophy goes, we're going to see a return to Neo-Confucianism. Neo-Confucianism is our blending of Confucianism plus Taoism. It takes a very high character to personal morality. It's very hostile to foreigners. Unfortunately, that's going to mean things get worse for the Buddhists. And it focuses on tradition. It's going to reinforce the characteristics of age, gender, class, all those distinctions which are very present and prominent in Chinese culture at the time. Unfortunately, though, the issue of not dealing with the nomads early on for the Song Dynasty is going to come back to them. And the Song are going to be invaded by the Jurchens. And these guys come in, sweep south, attack the capital city. The Song have no well, they have two choices. One is to be destroyed. The other is try to get out of town. They do option 2, relocate south, last about another 150 years. And this is going to become one of the golden ages of China, even though they are so thoroughly displaced. Some historians say that there is a North Song and South Song dynasty. For the purpose of this analysis, let's just call them one thing.